So please don't assume that I don't think your feelings are irrelevant, that I'm not taking into account your feelings in that respect. Now, where it gets tricky is what beliefs we come to as a result of that evidence and that data. And the person who put that best, in my view, is a certain Scot from the 18th century known as David Hume, where he put forth that a wise man proportions his belief to the evidence. To get from data to belief, we make two judgments. Evidence is never evidence sitting by itself. It's always evidence for a belief or evidence against a belief. So when we have data, I see people, or I see stuff, there's a light, there's a noise. I have to make a judgment as to what that data is evidence for. I have to make a list of things that it could be for. And after I have a certain body of evidence, we need to judge whether or not we have sufficient evidence to warrant taking that belief. Notice that we're exercising our judgment twice here. So this has all been very abstract. I'm going to try to make it a little more obvious with a clear example. So let's pretend that I have a girlfriend. If I'm worried that my fictitious girlfriend is cheating on me, then does the simple existence of my worry demonstrate that she is? I mean, I wouldn't be worried if she was faithful, right? If she drops a scrap of paper with a phone number on it and a name, Rick, and guiltily scrawls it up and hides it, is that evidence that she's cheating on me? Do I need to wait until I catch her in the act before I can draw the cheating conclusion? What if I've been cheated on before and I know all the signs? Do I need to wait out the whole tour d'affair until I get dumped? Or do I simply realize that prior to this we've had an open, communicative relationship, and her suddenly secretive behavior is a change, and that change concerns me? Is it possible for me, given the information today, to know if she's cheating on me, or organising a surprise party? It's not possible. So I have some data, my feelings, the scrap of paper, and now I need to judge what that data is evidence for, and if I decide the only available hypothesis is cheating, that's a problem, but that's my judgment. That doesn't come out directly out of the data itself. I can say, well, she doesn't know anyone, she only knows me. It's not my birthday anytime soon, so it couldn't be a surprise party. Is that enough to think maybe she's cheating on me? So watch the jumps. When people tell you such and such is evidence for, this fact, this sensory data, this number is evidence for a certain belief, is evidence for a certain theory, an idea, a God. Ask how. How did you make that step? What is your justification of moving from A to B? This leads me to the final point of my argument. I'm definitely going to come in 30 minutes. How do we decide on a standard, on a fair standard for forming beliefs? If we have a body of evidence for a belief, how do we decide that body is big enough to warrant getting that particular belief? When do we have enough evidence to form that belief? And that's not a simple question. I mean, that's been a core part of core part of philosophy for, 2,000 years. It's still going. There's still no answer. It's being worked on. However, I would argue that the standard of evidence for a religious belief is low as compared to any other aspect in your life. I would argue that the standard of evidence for a religious belief is very low. So low, in fact, that it is dangerous to the person who holds it. Let's talk about scams. Let's talk about people taking advantage of beliefs, what you're prepared to believe, given a certain evidence. Now, I am not saying in scams in general that a non-believer is any less vulnerable to a believer. But there's two kinds of scams out there. There are secular scams and there are religious scams. There are scams about water that will heal you, prayers that will heal you, people who can heal you by laying their hands on you. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, as an atheist, I am never, ever going to fall for that scam. It is impossible for me to entertain that notion at all, no matter how much I may want it to be true at some point. So the difference between a non-believer and a believer regarding these scams is while we are both susceptible to the secular scams, the believer is uniquely placed to be susceptible to the religious scams. We all make errors in judgment, but there's more opportunities for the believer to make that error than for the non-believer. You cannot rule out the possibility of being taken in. In fact, the con man relies on your confidence of not being taken in. According to CatholicNews.com, for example, over 6 million people visit Lourdes every year to paddle in water in the vain hope that they're going to be cured of what ails them. According to the North American Securities Administrators Association in the US, and this is from 2001, two of the schemes running at the time from the Baptist Foundation of Arizona and the Florida's Greater Ministries International were costing 40,000 investors nearly $1.3 billion. 3 years prior to that, or in the 3 years prior to that, 27 states had acted against religious scams that bilked more than 90,000 investors. But you're smarter than that, right? Peter Popoff, and half the room knows him already. His ministry based in Upland, California, and he's back. He went bankrupt in '87, but he's back now. Back in 1987, at his peak, he was pulling in $4.3 million every single month. How did this happen? Because people, Christians, judged him to be healing people by touch, to be delivering the word of God. They trusted the words of other deluded and tricked Christians merely because they were Christians speaking them. They saw people be touched and fall over. That was the data. Is that evidence for healing? They saw people smiling. Is that evidence you're getting better from cancer, multiple sclerosis? They saw people throw away crutches after being touched. They could walk. But you don't know that they were walking when they came in, and Popoff was done for his staff were giving people crutches on the way in. Those people could walk before they had crutches, before they were touched. And they judged all this data in combination with the belief that God exists and grants power to true believers, counting as evidence for Peter Popoff having superpowers. So I'm going to finish up with a small thought experiment. And it may be distressing to some, and I want to say I'm going to be talking about cancer. I mean, no disrespect to anyone who knows, and with cancer it's obviously a very touchy subject. But I particularly want the people who are listening now who say, no, I'm never going to be taken in. Don't be ridiculous. I'm not susceptible. I'm firmly believe God will keep me on the straight and narrow. I want you to imagine the following. I want you to picture a loved one. Someone you have strong feelings for. And it would be a painful, painful experience in your life if they were gone. And I want you to imagine that they have cancer. Not the nice, easy, curable kind of cancer, but the kind of cancer that's going to end their life in 6 months. All possible medical interventions have been looked into and will go nowhere. All the doctors can offer is comfort. They are going to die. And a friend of yours from church says to you, I know this guy. He's amazing. People can walk after not walking for years. People can see. People affected by multiple sclerosis are miraculously cured. All we need to do is we need to gather some money, $10,000 or so, for him to come to our building, pay for his expenses. That's all it is. Isn't your loved one, isn't he or she worth this small $10,000? Now I want you to imagine, can you say no? And if you can't tell me you will not be taken by a scam. And that's what's wrong with Christianity. Thank you.